Imagine a silence so profound you can hear the blood pumping in your own ears. You're standing on a sheet of ice that's, 2 miles thick? A white desert stretching out in every direction, just obliterating the horizon.
And it's dark, pitch black.
Completely black. The sun set in mid-October and you won't see it again until March. You're standing in one of the most hostile, unforgiving environments on Earth. But the scariest thing isn't the cold, and it isn't the isolation.
It's the feeling that you aren't alone.
Exactly. That is a terrifying image to start with.
It really is, but it captures the reality of the place perfectly. Sounds like the opening to a sci-fi horror movie. But what we're looking at today isn't fiction. We're talking about Greenland.
Right. And most people think of it as, this quiet, frozen expanse at the top of the map.
But from a strategic and, an intelligence perspective, it's arguably one of the loudest, busiest places on the planet.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are tackling the Greenland enigma. And honestly, when I started digging into the stack of research we have for this, I thought we were just going to be talking about some spooky lights in the sky.
The usual stuff.
Yeah, the usual, was it a saucer or was it a drone kind of thing. But this goes so much deeper. We aren't just looking at ghost stories here. We're analyzing a convergence of military strategy, indigenous folklore, modern video evidence, and a terrifying geopolitical reality.
It really is a perfect storm of factors. We've got official U.S. Air Force reports from the 1950s stuff that was classified for decades.
We have leaked documents about a massive, an artificial structure supposedly hiding under the ice sheet.
And then there's the modern video evidence from a researcher named Martin Kleist, which is, frankly, it's some of the most compelling footage I've ever seen described.
And maybe the most critical piece, and this is the part that kept me up last night, is how a misunderstood light in the sky could literally trigger World War III.
The doomsday scenario.
We are absolutely going to get to that at the end of this deep dive, specifically how radar echoes from these things could mimic a nuclear first strike. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for that because it changes everything about how you look at this phenomenon. It stops being about curiosity.
And it becomes about survival. The stakes are just incredibly high. Yeah. It completely transforms the topic from are we alone to can we survive the confusion of not knowing?
Okay, so before we get to the end of the world, we have to set the stage. Why Greenland? Why is everyone, the U.S. military, the Russians, the UFO researchers, so obsessed with this massive block of ice? I mean, it's beautiful, but it's desolate.
You have to look at a globe from the top down. Forget the flat maps we all used in school, the Mercator projections that stretch everything out.
Right, where Greenland looks as big as Africa.
Exactly. Look at the North Pole as the center of the world. Greenland sits right between the two great nuclear superpowers of the 20th and now the 21st centuries.
Right.
North America and the Eurasian landmass, specifically Russia.
So geographically, it's not just an island, it's the buffer zone.
It's the highway. It's the most direct route. During the Cold War, and even now, if a missile is launched at the United States from Russia, or even from China, it isn't flying over the Atlantic or the Pacific.
It's coming over the pole.
It's coming right over Greenland. It's the shortest possible path, the geodetic distance, between a silo in Siberia and a city in America.
It's basically the front porch of the United States defense system. If someone wants to kick in the door, they have to step on that porch first.
Precisely. And that's why Thule Air Base was built there. It's recently been renamed Pituffik Space Base.
Pituffik, right.
And it's not just a base. You have to think of it more like a cosmic microscope. It's the northernmost U.S. installation, way up in the northwest corner of Greenland. And its radar systems, the big ones, are designed to detect anything entering Earth's atmosphere from the north.
Let's pause on that tech for a second because I want to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about when we say upgraded early warning radar. This isn't the spinning dish you see at the local airport.
Oh, no. Not at all. These are massive phased array radars. Imagine a building, maybe 10 stories high, and the entire face of it is concrete and electronics. It doesn't move.
No moving parts.
None. It steers a beam of radio waves electronically, shifting the energy in milliseconds. It can scan huge volumes of space almost instantly. It's designed to spot something the size of a telephone pole.
A ballistic missile.
A ballistic missile from thousands of miles away.
So if something breaks the atmosphere, Pituffik sees it first.
That's the entire philosophy behind it. It provides that crucial warning time, maybe 15, 20 minutes at most, that allows the president to decide whether to launch a counterattack. It is the absolute first line of defense.
Which makes it the absolute worst place in the world to have unidentified flying objects buzzing around.
The worst. If your entire job is to look for nuclear missiles against a black, empty sky, you really don't want a lot of clutter on the screen. You want it to be clean.
And yet the records show that the sky over Thule is anything but clean.
And it has been that way for a very, very long time. I want to take us back to the beginning, or at least the early days of the Cold War, because a lot of skeptics will say, oh, it's just modern drones or it's Starlink satellites.
The usual dismissals.
Right. But we have a source here referencing a sighting as far back as 1942.
In the middle of World War II. Now, the details on that one are pretty sparse, but it's in the historical archives. It's classified as a potential UFO. And what it does is establish a timeline. This phenomenon didn't start with the internet or advanced Chinese drones.
It was there when we were flying propeller planes. It predates the entire space age.
Absolutely. But the real smoking gun from that era, the one that is it's undeniable, is the 1953 incident. This isn't a rumor. This is an official U.S. Air Force report.
Okay, let's unpack this one. December 10th, 1953, 8 miles northwest of Thule Air Base.
The setting is crucial. It's December in the Arctic. That means 24-hour darkness. It is pitch black, and you have two lieutenants, J.B. Hendon and Walter O'Reilly, flying an F-94 Starfire, an interceptor jet. And for anyone who isn't an aviation buff, the F-94 was a first-generation jet. It had radar, but it was primitive by today's standards. These guys were largely flying by sight and their basic instruments.
Exactly. These are highly trained observers in what was, at the time, a state-of-the-art jet. And they're on patrol in the most sensitive airspace in the world. And then suddenly, they aren't alone.
Walk us through what they saw. What did the report say?
They report a green light. Now, initially, they compared the size to a navigation light, like what you'd see on the wingtip of another plane.
Okay, so they thought it was another aircraft at first.
Possibly. But its behavior was completely anomalous. It wasn't blinking. It wasn't moving like a conventional plane.
And the speed?
Well, they were doing about 400 knots. That's roughly 460 miles per hour. This light just aligns with them and paces them effortlessly. It's just flying perfectly parallel to their jet.
And it was silent. That's the detail that always gets me in these reports. No exhaust, no tail, no sound.
If it was another jet, even at a distance, you'd see a heat signature or a contrail, right? Especially in that kind of cold.
Oh, for sure. The air is so cold and dry. A conventional jet engine would leave this massive thermal footprint and a very visible contrail. Think about seeing your breath on a cold day, just magnified by 1,000 degrees.
And this object had none of that. It was just a light moving with what appeared to be intelligent control.
And then what happened? It just flew off.
It's how it left that defied physics as they understood them. It didn't bank or turn like a plane. You had to roll into a turn to use air resistance to change direction.
Right.
After pacing them for a few seconds, just long enough to be clearly seen, it seems, it just vanished. It didn't fly away into the distance and get smaller and smaller. It just ceased to exist in that spot.
Right.
Instantaneous acceleration, or it just winked out.
Wow. And the Air Force, they couldn't just sweep this one under the rug. It was their own pilots.
They certainly tried to rationalize it. They looked at meteors, which is the standard explanation for lights in the sky.
Swamp gas and weather balloons, the classics.
Right. But a meteor doesn't fly parallel to a jet at 400 knots on a steady heading.
Mm-hmm.
Meteors fall, they burn up, they obey gravity. They don't escort military aircraft.
So what was the final word?
The official classification, which you can still find in the archives, is possible flying object.
Possible flying object. That's very careful military language for we have absolutely no idea what that was, but we know it was solid.
It's a huge admission. So we've established this has been going on for 70 plus years. Controlled, intelligent movement in the most sensitive airspace on the planet.
Okay, so let's fast forward from there. That's fascinating history, but what's happening right now in the 2020s is active. It's happening as we speak.
And that means we need to talk about the work of Martin Kleist.
Yes, Martin Kleist. Now, usually when we talk about UFO hunters, people might picture, guys in tinfoil hats in a basement somewhere. But Kleist is different.
Very different. He's a lawyer. He's a podcaster. And he has Greenlandic roots, which is key. He approaches this with a very legal, evidentiary mindset. He's not trying to prove a religion. He's trying to document a case.
So what pushed him to go out into the field in 2023? Why stop reading reports and actually go look?
He was motivated by reports from pilots and mechanics in a place called Narsak in southern Greenland. And this is an important distinction. He wasn't chasing internet rumors. He was talking to aviation professionals.
People with a lot to lose by making this stuff up.
Exactly. People who were telling him, we see these things every day.
Every day. That seems like a lot. If pilots were seeing UFOs every single day, wouldn't it be on the news?
You would think so. But the aviation culture is very specific. Pilots are trained to be rational, but they're also terrified of losing their medical clearance. If you report seeing flying saucers, you might get grounded for a psych evaluation. It's a career killer.
So they keep quiet about it publicly.
They talk to each other, but they rarely talk to the press. They talk to Kleist because he was local, he understood, and he just listened without judgment.
So Kleist and a documentarian, Lasse Rabik, they travel to Narsak. Describe this place for us.
Narsak is a tiny settlement, maybe 120 people. It sits right on the edge of the wilderness in a valley surrounded by these huge mountains. It's incredibly isolated.
No light pollution?
Zero. If you want a pristine view of what's in the sky, this is the place to be. It's a natural observatory.
And they set up with infrared cameras, which seems to have been the key. Why infrared instead of just normal video cameras?
Because a lot of these phenomena seem to radiate energy outside the visible spectrum of light. To your naked eye, it might look like nothing or maybe a faint shimmer, but in infrared, which detects heat signatures, these things can light up like a Christmas tree. It basically lets you see the invisible.
And they didn't have to wait long, did they? They saw something they called the big one.
This is the encounter that really changes the conversation. They're watching a mountain ridge at night, and suddenly a massive glowing orb rises from behind the mountains.
Yeah.
This wasn't a small point of light. It was described as a huge oval or spherical object.
And it was pulsing, right? The sources say it was shifting from pink to red.
Yes, and it wasn't just a flicker. It hung there for 4 minutes. Now, 4 minutes is an eternity when you're watching something impossible. Most sightings are seconds. You blink and you miss it. This thing just sat there. It essentially allowed itself to be filmed.
Ross Coulthart, who's a very well-regarded journalist in this field, he's worked for 60 Minutes in Australia. He's seen it all. He reviewed Kleist's footage from a later trip in 2025. What was his take on it?
He called it the best UFO video I have seen in a long time. And Coulthart is not easily impressed. For him to say that, the footage must show something that is clearly not a drone, not a plane, not a flare.
But what I find even more interesting than the video, because let's be honest, in the age of AI and CGI, videos are getting harder to trust, is the interaction, the flash interaction. This is the part that makes it feel less like just technology and more like, well, intelligence.
I agree. The team reported seeing these camera-like flashes in the sky. Not lightning, not aircraft strobes, just single, bright, instantaneous flashes.
Like someone taking a picture.
Exactly. And at one point, in a moment of frustration or maybe just dark humor, they asked for a sign. They jokingly asked the phenomenon to show itself.
They just spoke to it out loud.
They spoke to the empty air. And immediately, in the exact spot they were looking at, a flash occurred.
That sends a shiver down my spine. That implies they're being watched back. It's not a ship passing in the night. It's an engagement.
It completely changes the dynamic.
Oh, yeah.
If you shine a laser at a plane, the pilot might not even notice. But if you ask a light to appear, and it does, that suggests a feedback loop, a consciousness. It suggests the observer and the observed are somehow linked.
And it wasn't just the lights, right? They had massive technical failures out there.
Which is a classic hallmark of these close encounter cases. We call it the EM effect, electromagnetic interference. Hard drives getting wiped, SD cards deleting their own files.
Now, that's always suspicious to me. It sounds a little too convenient. Oh, the best evidence got deleted by the aliens. Like the dog ate my homework.
It does, and that's a fair and necessary critique. But it happens so consistently in these high strangeness cases that it's almost become a data point in itself. It's what some researchers call the trickster element of the phenomenon. It seems to allow you to see it, but it prevents you from definitively proving it to the wider world.
This leads us to the psychological aspect, which Kleist was very open about. He didn't just document the lights. He talked about his dreams.
Yes. Kleist reported that during the expedition, he began having these incredibly vivid, recurring dreams. He described them as world-altering. He said they turned his world upside down.
It sounds almost like an infection, like just being near the phenomenon can change your brain chemistry or your consciousness.
There's a concept for this in the research community. It's called recursive unsolvability.
Recursive unsolvability. Okay, that's a mouthful. Break that down for us.
The idea is that the phenomenon, whatever it is, might not be a simple puzzle waiting for us to find the missing piece. It might be designed to be unsolvable. Its purpose isn't to be identified as craft X from planet Y. Its purpose is to change how we think.
So it's a riddle that rewires your brain while you try to solve it.
Exactly. It forces the observer to question their own reality. It breaks your cognitive model of the world, your solid beliefs about what's possible and what's impossible, and forces you to build a new, broader one.
So the UFO isn't the point. The confusion is the point.
In a way, yes. Think about it like this. If you hand a caveman a smartphone, he can't use it. You can't make a call. But his entire understanding of what is possible in the universe shifts just by holding it. He now knows that shiny, glowing rocks exist. Kleist believes these lights possess a consciousness component. They're interactive. They're ontologically shocking.
Ontological shock, the feeling of your entire worldview shattering.
Precisely. And for a lawyer like Kleist, who deals in hard facts and evidence, that shock must have been profound.
Now, we have to be fair here. We have a duty to look at the other side. Not everyone is buying the interdimensional consciousness theory. We have the skeptics, specifically the analysis from a group called Metabunk. They looked at Kleist's Big One Orb video. What's their explanation?
It's a valid and necessary counterpoint. The skeptical argument relies on commercial flight paths. The town of Narsak is situated under the approach path for aircraft heading into the capital, Nuuk. Specifically, flights GL411 or GL413.
So they're just saying it's a plane.
They argue that a plane coming head-on with its powerful landing lights on can look like a stationary, pulsing orb to an observer on the ground. Because it's coming directly at you, it doesn't appear to move left or right. It just seems to hang there and get brighter.
Okay, that makes some sense. What about the pulsing?
They attribute that to atmospheric distortion. Heat waves, thin clouds passing in front of the light, that kind of thing. And when the plane finally turns to align with the runway, the lights would seem to vanish or change dramatically because the angle shifts. It's a prosaic explanation, and honestly, in 99% of sightings, it's probably the right one.
But I hear a but coming.
But it doesn't explain everything. It doesn't explain the profound silence. A passenger jet landing in a quiet valley echoes for miles. It doesn't explain the coordinated movements of multiple lights that Kleist and his team reported on other nights. And it certainly doesn't explain the interactive flash response or the selective deletion of data.
And also, Kleist isn't an amateur. He knows what planes look like. The pilots he was interviewing, the ones who actually fly these routes, they certainly know what planes look like.
That's the crux of the disagreement. To dismiss the big one as a scheduled flight, you have to assume that multiple trained witnesses are incompetent, that they can't tell the difference between a Boeing 737, a giant glowing orb. It ignores the human testimony of the people who are actually standing there in the freezing cold.
It's the classic standoff. The data says, could be a plane. The witness says, absolutely impossible. But let's leave the sky for a moment and go down, way down. Because if you think lights in the sky are weird, wait until you hear what is supposedly hiding under the ice. This brings us to the object under the ice theory.
This is definitely the most controversial part of the entire Greenland narrative. But it is also, strangely, one of the most persistent.
This theory feels like it comes straight out of a movie script, The Thing, The X-Files. But the sources on this are strangely specific. Where does this story even come from?
The origin is murky, which is pretty typical for these kinds of deep leaks. It seems to have surfaced primarily between 2018 and 2021. There was an anonymous Reddit post from someone claiming to be a frantic insider, which was quickly deleted, and that was followed by leaks of documents that were scrubbed from the web almost as fast as they appeared.
And what do these leaks claim is down there?
The claim is that there is a massive structure buried under 3 kilometers. That's almost 2 miles of solid ice in northeast Greenland, and they give remarkably precise coordinates for it. 76 degrees, 31 minutes north, 68 degrees, 42 minutes west.
And when you say massive, how massive are we talking?
The reports describe it as being 420 meters long. That's more than 4 football fields laid end to end. It's described as being highly symmetrical, either rectangular or elliptical in shape, and the claim is that it emits a faint thermal or electromagnetic signature.
Not enough to melt the ice all the way to the surface, I guess.
No, but just enough to be picked up by deep ground-penetrating radar. We have satellites now that can essentially see through the ice to map the bedrock underneath. The story goes that they were mapping the rock and they found something that wasn't rock.
So the story goes that the U.S. military finds this anomaly, they drill down, and what did they supposedly hit?
Allegedly, they hit a hull, but not just metal. The material was described in the leaks as a self-healing alloy.
Self-healing, like biological, or something else.
Or extremely advanced in nanotechnology. The story claims they used diamond drills and even lasers to try and penetrate it. They would cut a groove into the material, and within minutes of the drill stopping, the material would just flow back together and repair the damage.
That is not human technology. We have things like self-healing concrete, but nothing that works that fast with what would have to be a high-tensile alloy.
Not that we know of, no. And the source also claimed that their scans revealed the object is hollow, It's not a solid block. It has interior chambers, hallways, even control rooms. The implication is that this is an ancient but intact craft, a mothership, essentially, that's been there for maybe thousands of years, buried by the shifting glaciers.
Okay, I know a lot of people listening are probably thinking, come on, a secret alien base, a self-healing ship under the ice. It sounds way too wild to be true. But here is where it gets really interesting and connects to the real world. Do you remember back in 2019?
I do.
President Trump suddenly gets on TV and says he wants to buy Greenland. The whole world laughed. It became a meme. Denmark was insulted. It just seemed like this completely random, bizarre outburst.
It was treated as a diplomatic absurdity, a total joke. But look at the timing. These leaks about this massive structure appear in that 2018 to 2021 window. And suddenly, the President of the United States makes a very serious, very public offer to purchase the entire territory.
And our sources mention a leaked internal memo related to this whole thing. It allegedly didn't say, we want the real estate for hotels. The wording was something like, secure it completely. No leaks, no sharing. Get Greenland if needed.
That phrasing, secure it completely.
Rah.
That is the language of containment. That's not the language of a real estate deal.
Exactly. If there is an artifact of non-human origin under the ice, and the ice is melting,
Which it is. Greenland is losing ice at a catastrophic rate.
then eventually whatever is down there is going to be exposed. And if you're the United States, you do not want that sitting in Danish territory. You don't want the EU or China getting access to it. You want it on U.S. soil. Buying the island solves that sovereignty issue instantly. It lets you lock the site down without having to ask Copenhagen for permission.
It makes the absurd purchase offer look incredibly rational, actually. If you knew there was a crashed alien spaceship with trillions of dollars in technology under the ice, of course you'd try to buy the land.
It just aligns the geopolitical weirdness with the UAP narrative in a way that's hard to ignore. And we already know there are weird geological things happening there anyway. I mean, look at the Hiawatha Crater.
And that's confirmed science, right? That's not a conspiracy theory. A 31-kilometer-wide impact crater was discovered under the Hiawatha Glacier a few years ago. It was a massive meteorite impact. Now, officially, it's just a crater. But when you layer that on top of the known magnetic anomalies in North Greenland, places where compasses spin and GPS just glitches out, it adds fuel to the fire.
Is it just a huge deposit of iron in the ground from the meteorite? Or is it active technology interfering with our instruments?
That is the multi-trillion-dollar question. And the Inuit people have been reporting these anomalies for generations.
That brings us to the indigenous perspective. Because we in the West, we treat this like it's news. But for the people who actually live there, this is just reality.
The indigenous knowledge is so vital here. We often ignore it, favoring our fancy radars and our satellites. But the Inuit folklore speaks of flying kayaks and light beings from the spirit world.
Flying kayaks. I love that imagery. It's framing this advanced technology in terms they understood at the time.
Exactly. For the Western military mind, a light in the sky is an anomaly. It's a threat. It needs to be identified, cataloged, and, if necessary, shot down. For the Inuit, it's just part of the natural order of things. They don't have that same ontological shock because their worldview already includes non-human intelligences. They accept that they share the territory with other beings.
It's pretty arrogant of us to think we're the first ones to notice. But there's another layer to why these things might be there. It might not just be about hiding. It might be about what's in the ground. We need to talk about Kvanefjeld.
Kvanefjeld is a mountain in southern Greenland, and it's a geological freak of nature. It contains one of the largest undeveloped deposits of rare earth elements and uranium in the entire world.
Okay, uranium we all know. That's nuclear power, nuclear weapons. But what exactly are rare earth elements?
Things like neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium. These are the metals that make our modern life possible. They're in your iPhone, they're in the magnets for electric car batteries, and critically, they are in the guidance systems of advanced missiles and stealth aircraft.
So it's high-tech treasure.
It's the ultimate treasure. And there's a very, very strong correlation in UAP research globally between nuclear assets, uranium mines, storage facilities, missile silos, and UAP sightings. We saw it at Los Alamos, we saw it over Malmstrom Air Force Base, and we see it in Greenland.
So, two possibilities. Are they watching us dig up dangerous materials? Or do they need this stuff too?
That is the big question. Are they monitoring our extraction of things like uranium, almost like a parent watching a child play with matches? Or is there some deeper connection between these rare earth elements and the technology these craft use? Maybe they're refueling. We see the pattern everywhere, but in Greenland, the concentration of sightings around these resource-rich areas is statistically significant.
Okay, so let's just recap where we are before we get into the final, most dangerous part of this. We have a history of sightings going back to WWII.
We have the compelling modern evidence from Martin Kleist and that potential consciousness connection.
Oh, we have the wild theory of the ship under the ice, which is weirdly supported by Trump's move to buy the whole island.
And we have this strange connection to nuclear materials and rare earth metals.
But now we need to talk about the part that stops being fun and speculative and starts being absolutely terrifying.
This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where the Greenland enigma becomes a matter of global survival. We're leaving the realm of what if and entering the realm of immediate strategic danger.
We need to talk about the radar echoes. We need to talk about the concept of an accidental apocalypse.
Let's go back to Pituffik, the space base. We establish it's there to watch, for one thing, missiles, ICBMs coming from Russia over the pole.
Right, the cosmic microscope. Its job is to detect things flying fast over the top of the world.
Its job is to get a detection, track the trajectory, and warn the U.S. president so a decision can be made. And the timeline for that decision, from the moment of detection to the order to launch a counterstrike, is roughly 15 to 30 minutes, max. That is all the time the world has left before it ends.
So what happens when a UAP enters that very specific, very high-stakes picture?
The problem is what military analysts call ghost targets.
Yeah.
These objects, as reported by Kleist and those 1953 pilots, they move fast, hypersonic fast. In fact, we have sources mentioning a satellite track of an object that moved 47 kilometers in 0.3 seconds.
Wait, run the math on that for me. 47 kilometers in 0.3 seconds. That's not speed, that's practically teleportation.
It's roughly 150 kilometers per second. That's around Mach 440. It's physically impossible by our current understanding. The G-forces, the inertia, would turn a human pilot into a red mist. But a radar system doesn't think about physics. It just sees a blip.
And what does that blip look like to the computer and to the person watching the screen? It looks like an incoming warhead. Or worse, it looks like a MIRV, a multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicle. That's when a single missile releases a cloud of warheads that move at hypersonic speeds toward different cities. A swarm of UAPs moving erratically looks terrifyingly similar to a MIRV spread on a radar screen.
Okay, so paint the picture. You're a young Space Force operator at Pituffik. It's 3 in the morning, you're on your third cup of coffee just staring at the screen, and suddenly it just lights up. You see a target, it's moving impossibly fast, and it's heading south towards the U.S.
Your training, your protocol, everything says, that is a missile. You don't have a button on your console for alien spaceship.
Yeah.
You have friend or foe, and if it's moving that fast over the pole from that direction, it is a foe.
You hit the alarm, you alert the chain of command, the information flashes to NORAD headquarters in Colorado, it goes to the Pentagon, it goes to the president. The nuclear football is open.
And the president, woken from a dead sleep, asks the general, is this real? Is this a drill?
And the general has to say, sir, the radar confirms multiple hypersonic inbounds.
Because the radar does confirm it. The radar isn't broken. It's accurately tracking something that is physically there. But the interpretation is catastrophically wrong. It's seeing a UAP, but the entire system is designed and categorized to see a Russian first strike.
But it's not a missile. It's one of these flying kayaks or a probe from whatever is under the ice. But the radar doesn't know that. And the president has 10 minutes to decide whether to launch a full-scale nuclear counterstrike before Washington, D.C. gets vaporized.
And here is the absolute nightmare scenario. This is the chain reaction. The U.S. detects this inbound threat. They cannot risk waiting for it to hit. The entire doctrine of mutually assured destruction relies on launching before your own missiles are destroyed in their silos, so they initiate a retaliatory strike.
Or at the very least, they elevate their entire nuclear force to DEFCON 1. They open the silo doors in North Dakota. They scramble the B-52.
Russia is watching. Russia has its own early warning satellites. They see the U.S. suddenly activating its entire nuclear posture. They see the silo doors opening. They see the communications traffic spike. They assume we are attacking them.
Because from their perspective, they didn't launch anything. They know they didn't shoot. So if the U.S. is suddenly preparing to shoot, they have to assume we are initiating a surprise first strike.
Exactly. So they launch for real. They empty their silos to save their arsenal before it gets destroyed on the ground.
And we stumble, completely by accident, into global thermonuclear war, all because of a ghost on a screen, because of a misunderstanding.
It is the ultimate fog of war. It's an accidental apocalypse. And what makes this specifically acutely dangerous in Greenland is the total lack of communication about it.
This is the part about Denmark, right? The diplomatic black hole.
Yes, the Danish authorities, specifically their Arctic Command, have an official policy of denial. They state publicly that they have no records of UFOs. They refuse to share any UAP data with the United States despite being NATO allies with defense treaties.
Wait, hang on. So if a Danish pilot sees one of these UAPs and knows it's just a local phenomenon, oh, that's just the Spirit light again, they don't tell the U.S. Space Force operators at the base right next door.
That appears to be the current situation. The pilots in NARSAC talk to a researcher like Martin Kleist, but that information doesn't officially flow to the Pentagon. So the Americans at Pituffik are operating in a complete information vacuum. If they see something, they don't have the context of, oh, the locals see this strange light all the time. They just see a threat.
This silence, this diplomatic refusal to even acknowledge that the phenomenon is real, it increases the risk of a fatal misunderstanding by 100-fold.
It creates a blind spot, a very, very dangerous one in the most dangerous place on Earth.
It's completely insane. We are literally risking civilization to avoid the political embarrassment of admitting there are lights in the sky we can't explain.
It's an issue of sovereignty. Think about it from a government's perspective. The defining characteristic of a country is that it controls its borders and its airspace. If you admit that unknown objects are flying through your most sensitive airspace at will, that you can't stop them, and you don't even know what they are, you have admitted a fundamental loss of sovereignty. You have admitted you are not in control.
And for a military or a government, that's an impossible admission to make. It makes them look weak and powerless.
But they pretend it isn't happening.
Yeah.
They classify the reports. They ignore the data. But the radar doesn't pretend. The automated systems don't pretend.
And you have to factor in the current geopolitical climate. The panic factor has to be huge. We're already in a high-tension state with Russia, with China. Everyone is on a hair trigger.
Precisely. The biggest threat isn't that the aliens are going to invade. I want to be very, very clear about that. The threat isn't a UAP attacking us with a laser beam. The threat is that human paranoia, combined with our incredibly fast automated weapon systems, will react to something it doesn't understand. We destroy ourselves because we see a shadow on the wall and we're convinced it's a monster.
That is a deeply sobering thought. We've gone from green lights pacing a fighter jet in 1953 to Martin Kleist getting flashed by orbs in the mountains to a potential ancient base hiding under the ice, all leading to this cliff edge where one misunderstanding ends everything.
It connects it all. The secrecy around a potential base under the ice feeds the lack of data sharing between allies. That lack of data sharing feeds the radar operators' confusion. That confusion feeds the risk of nuclear war. It's a cascade of secrets that makes the world infinitely more dangerous.
So what does this all mean for us? For the person listening to this who just wants to pay their mortgage and live their life, why should they care so much about some weird lights over Greenland?
It means we need to demand transparency. Not just because we're curious about aliens, though of course we are, but because this level of secrecy is a global safety hazard. If we don't normalize the observation of these things, if we don't create an official protocol for unknown object do not fire, we are playing Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun. We need to integrate this data into our safety systems, not hide it away in a classified drawer.
And we're running out of time on that front. The ice is melting.
That is the final variable in this whole equation, the climate.
Which brings me to the one last thought I want to leave everyone with. We've talked about the ice melting, about it revealing resources and maybe revealing that structure.
Yes, the ice sheet is retreating faster every year.
So if the ice in Greenland continues to melt at its current rate, whatever is down there, whether it's a crash site, a secret base, or just some weird ancient rock, it is going to be revealed. It won't be a secret for much longer. Nature is going to declassify it for us.
And we might not be ready for what we find when it does.
So here's the final question for you to think about. Are we hiding the truth to protect the public from the shock of discovering we're not alone? Or are we hiding it to protect the world from the panic that could lead to our own self-destruction?
That is the question. Are we ready to see what's under the blanket? Because nature is pulling it off, whether we like it or not.
Keep your eyes on the north, everyone. You've been listening to The Deep Dive.
Stay curious. See you in the next one.